Awesome. Right, I hope everyone can hear me. So today we're talking to Danyel, who is a fellow Kiwi physio hypnotist. Well, he's the face of physio and hypnotherapy in New Zealand, and I know overseas. I do know a couple of things about Danyel. One, he's currently watching She-Hulk, which is a TV series, and loving it. So that's something I knew that I found today. He's got a 3rd Dan black belt in Haidong Gumdo. Is it right?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah,
Haidong Gumdo.
Yeah, and it's I see him on Facebook doing it. It's a Korean sword martial arts, which he is coaching for World Championships in Korea next year. He's a father to 3 boys, Oliver and 2 16-month-old twins, Felix and Leo, and he's a hypnophysio. So he teaches hypnosis to physios, but also any kind of people in the industry, of health,
any health professional,
around New Zealand,
but also hypnotists as well.
Yeah. So welcome, Danyel. Go to it.
Much. I was when I was first studying hypnosis, I was having a conversation with Freddie Jacquin, and when I was going into it, I wanted to know what was actually happening when it comes to hypnosis. What's happening in the brain and the body, because it just seemed like magic. And when I asked him some of the specifics, Freddie, this larger than life personality that is so well known around the world, just like, I don't know, I just know it works. And he told me a story about how when he was a kid, his dad had purchased the family's first vehicle. And for Freddie, it was just a way to get to the beach. And he was really excited about going as a family on the weekend to go to the beach. But his dad wanted to take apart the car and put it back together and find out all the little parts and bits and pieces and how it worked. And over the next months and years, that's what happened. Freddie was excited to go to the beach, and that's where his energy and enthusiasm for cars went. And his dad continued to dissect and take apart that car so he understood how it worked. And I'm a little bit with both sides of things. I love Freddie's being in that space and just experiencing it, and yet I want to understand the underpinnings, the stuff that really gets the process going, because I feel like if I understand the process and what's happening in the brain and the body, it's going to be making me even more effective. So hi, I'm Danyel Degenhardt. Thank you, Justine, for that introduction. I'm the hypnophysio, and today we're going to be going through some targeted hypnotic treatment. So I'm going to start with giving you a little bit of a background of what pain is and how it works from a neuroscience perspective, and then go through different parts of the brain and how our conversations, whether they're suggestions, hypnotic suggestions that we do intentionally or unintentionally, how they're activating and inhibiting different parts of the brain. And then after doing that, we're going to give you some specific suggestions that you can use in your practice to make you a more effective hypnotist tomorrow. So I'm excited to have this opportunity. So let's get right into it. I'm going to share my screen here. Just give me a moment for that. And there we go. So way back history. Here I am, a hypnotist, not using my language very well. So going back in time, Descartes was one of these first people who had an understanding of the mind and the body, but considered it more of a machine, that there was a mechanical response, and then that response went and had an action from it. But we know it's a bit more complex than that now. One of the models that is well known, especially in the physio world, is from Melzek and Wall, and talks about the many different structures within a pain system that can affect our experience of pain. This can be from the different nerve endings coming in, and I'm not going to go into the specifics. Like, few physios will recognize these. As the hypnotist, I just want you to have an understanding that there's lots of different inputs that go into the brain, and that there's this pain gate. And the pain gate theory is essentially like you have a gate and you open it up. And if you have a whole bunch of messages going through that pain gate all at once, then not all of those messages are going to get through. Just like if you had a whole bunch of people attempting to go through a gate, not everybody is going to be able to get through. So when you have all of these messages going up into the brain, it's the brain's processing to determine if there's going to be pain or not. And what this means is that cortical activity, the brain, is required for the generation of a painful experience. So the late Dr. Peter Rousseau, he was a neuropsychotherapist in Australia. I had the privilege of watching a few presentations from him. And he talked about how no brain, no pain, but no body, still pain. That you can have if there's no brain, there's not going to be any pain. But if you have a lost limb, you could still experience pain in that part of your body. Just because the hand is no longer there doesn't mean that that part of the brain isn't active still. So this idea that you need to have the brain in order to experience pain. Another term that's really important when it comes to the brain is neuroplasticity. Neuro because it's the brain, the nervous system, and plasticity because plastics can mold and change. But unlike a plastic that takes a lot of effort and force, the brain actually changes really quickly and rapidly. And this can go either in a positive or a negative way. And that neuroplasticity is what we're tapping into as hypnotists. On the negative side of things, when people come to you with persistent pain, or maybe they're coming to you with anxiety or fear or some other thing, but they have an experience of persistent pain, there's likely an underlying central sensitization. Now, this is a term that is related to central, as in the central nervous system, your brain, spinal cord, nerves, and sensitization, it means it's increased sensitivity. So it just means that there's changes at the brain that causes a potential for increased pain. There's changes at the level of the spinal cord that makes those messages more easily going through that pain gate. And then right down through to the most superficial parts, you can have this term of inflammatory soup, all of the mechanisms right at the blood vessels and the receptors of where you're at in that space. And there's different processes, very complex, and yet all of them put together creates this increased sensitivity of the brain that makes it more possible for pain to exist. And another term that's quite often used in the physio world is this idea of a neural matrix, which shows how there's multiple different inputs from your cognition, your emotion, your sensory, all of that is kind of coming in, jumbling together, and you have this output of pain, you have output of motor, so your movement, your responses physically, your output of stress and emotion in this space as well. And the most important thing, if from this little background I taught you here so far, is that pain is an output. It is an output of the brain. We do not get a message from our finger. If I smash my finger and that message goes to my brain, it is not a pain message to my brain. It is simply a message. That's it. And it's when the brain decides this is important, yes, this is pain, it is an output of the brain. But that is good news, because that means that we can change the inputs, and that as a hypnotist, we can change the cognitions, the emotion, the sensory with the different tools we have. I'm going to give you a really brief overview of a model I use for every one of my clients to educate about pain. If you've seen some of my other talks, the Hypnosis New Zealand conference or other ones, I go into this a little bit more in depth, but and I'm also going to in a moment, I'm going to put 2 documents that you can download. I forgot to do that initially, so I'm going to do that in a moment. So you'll have this as an education tool as well as the handout for this presentation, so you can focus on it. Forgot to do that at the beginning. So reminder after this. So the triune model. Back in the 1950s, 60s, neuroscience was becoming a new field of science and research. And in the triune model, try as in three, not as try as in implies failure, try as in three. Three parts of the brain to develop. The first, your primitive brain, you need it to survive. The second is your limbic system, your emotional kind of memory system. This gives you context for those survival mechanisms so that you can learn and keep yourself safe. And the last part is your neocortex. This is everything else, your higher kind of consciousness, thoughts, movement, sensation, language, everything else. Now, if we think about it in a very simplistic way, that we have these three regions that develop in the brain, that we have two loops. We have a pain survival loop, active every single time you experience pain, stress, anxiety, fear. And you have a 2-3 thriving loop. Every time that you do something you enjoy, that is novel, that is unique, that you love. And then this is important because multitasking is a myth. It does not exist. What happens when you attempt to do two things at once, you're actually bouncing in between two parts of the brain very quickly. So it seems like it's happening at the same, but it is still going from one to the other. And it's the pathways that are developed that make it either fast or slow. That's great news, because if you stop and inhibit those pain messages, even if it's just for a few minutes, a few moments, and you engage that thriving loop, you are doing something important. So when you have a client with you and they might have this very big experience and you can guide them through a process, in those moments, you are taking them from a pain survival loop into a thriving loop. And then when you teach them self-hypnosis, they're able to tap into this thriving loop more and more, which is going to help to decrease that central sensitization and empower them to heal and recover. So that is the triune model. And I'm just going to stop share right now and potentially ask for an assist with Justine. I want to share these two resources. So can I do that in the chat, I believe?
Yeah, you should just be able to slide them over from your desktop.
Okay, I will do that.
Or you can send them to me and I can do it for you.
Oh, I should be able to do that right now. I have it open on my screen. So let's just do that. And if anybody is watching the recording of this, you can email admin@rethinkpainworkshop.com and I will send you those as well. All right, so let's put those two resources over. So those are being sent. So you can click and open them now. The targeted hypnotic treatment is the one we're going through. The how to rethink pain is just an additional resource for you.
So Daniel, rethinkpain.com, did you say?
admin@rethinkpainworkshop.com.
Oh, workshop. Gotcha.
Yeah, I will type that into admin@rethinkpainworkshop.com, even though, oh, you got it. On top of it. Great, thank you, Justine. All right, back into the regular scheduled programming. So now we're going to get into some of the research about hypnosis and the brain and body. Now, for each of these sections of the brain and the body, I'm going to give you a really simple explanation about the function of it, then go into any research from a hypnotic perspective, a suggested outcome measure, because this is something that I use quite often in my practice, especially with ACC pain management service clients, that they go through an extensive outcome measure process before coming and working with me. And outcome measures can help to give that starting point and finish point, even in one session, but it's something that on paper, that it's like a snapshot, just a photo of that moment in time that you can then see, hey, we did make a difference or not. It can also give you information about what systems of the brain and the body are active. So we're going to go into that a little bit more as we go. So the peripheral system is, the nervous system includes the nerves, ganglia outside of the brain, the spinal cord and neuromuscular junctions, cranial nerves, which are involved in the primitive reflexes, and everything coming out, carrying the information from and to the central nervous system, the brain. And the research around hypnosis, there's two studies that are interesting. The peripheral nervous system can be effective through hypnosis, and it can also change the vascular activity. So it can change these aspects of our peripheral nervous system, which is really wild. It shows that our brain can actually control the system output, which is really cool. And it can also help in wound healing. So looking at it from there's that image about the, I can't remember exactly what it was called here. Let me go back up here. Inflammatory soup. That's a really great technical term. But right at that peripheral, the farthest part of our body, the hypnotic process can affect, which is really cool. So I like looking at that. And the suggestions that we can provide to directly affect these areas, I'm going to go through in a really interesting way, because I can tell you them, you can read them, but instead I want you to experience them. So for each of these sections of the brain and the body, there are a few hypnotic suggestions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide a hypnotic induction and going into a space where I'll then provide those hypnotic suggestions so you can experience them first. And I want you to think of any stress, any anxiety, any pain, any fear, just something that you want to improve by the end of this session. The more specific that you can get, the better. And then as I'm giving the language, I'm going to be as context-free as possible, but just feel free to adapt the language to fit your needs. I am someone who am working with clients experiencing pain more so than the anxieties and stressors, but all of that goes hand in hand. And so I'm going to provide this for you right now. Does that sound cool? All right, it's got a few nods of the heads there. Well, I want you to get yourself as comfortable as you can. Know that if there's any noises or if people need to get you, you'll just be able to open your eyes and go and attend to them. But for this time right now that you're focused in this space, bring all of that awareness into my voice. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take 3 deep breaths with me. On the first breath, your eyelids will just start to relax. And I want you to really bring that relaxation into those eyelids. The second breath, the eyelids will get so relaxed that they'll just close. And by the third breath, those eyelids, the muscles all around it will be so relaxed that they just stay closed. And that you can even boing the eyebrows up and try to open them, and you'll just find that they'll just stay even more closed. It took me a little moment there to come out of that space. That's how powerful and easy it is to get into it. So here's that first deep breath in. As you breathe out, just allow those muscles of your eyes to just relax. As you take that second big breath from the belly in and out, relaxing those eyelids even more. And that third deep breath in and out. And as you continue to breathe at a deep and appropriate rate for you, you can test your eyebrows up and down to really show how locked and relaxed those eyes are. And then just simply stop trying and allow those eyes to stay closed. Because as you continue to follow my voice, you can tune into that part of you that you want to change right now. Whether it's a release of pain, stress, anxiety, fear, just something that you want to feel better with by the end of this session here today. And as you do that, your unconscious mind knows of an even deeper place of focus, because you've all trained in that space many times. And I want to ask your unconscious mind to simply go there now. And as you follow my voice, I want you to think about tuning in to your peripheral nervous system and just experience the area of your body that you want to create that change. And if it's emotion, tune into the body to notice where that is. If it's a physical feeling, imagine it's like it's being engulfed by a psychological anesthesia, just a numbness, a complete elimination, as you get instead a pleasant sensation of comfort. And I want you to picture these feelings or sensations spreading through that area, and just notice how naturally, how easily that anesthetic, that analgesia effect can just make those areas feel curiously a little bit different and more pleasant, and even decreasing the sensations from the area that you no longer need in this moment in time, as if they're just disappearing. And this powerful and long-lasting analgesic effect, it's just simply doing its job. The area that's affected is getting cooler, more comfortable, and just experience the pouring of a soothing fluid over that area. And imagine that favorite place that you have where you can just experience that area in a soothing stream or pool of water. Maybe it's the ocean, maybe it's the river, maybe it's this place that's even more beautiful and relaxing. And as you simply be in that space, you might want to also increase the healing in that area. Imagine all those parts of your lymphocytes, your white blood cells, all of the things in your bloodstream that are going to promote healing. Imagine them just multiplying, expanding, going all the way through your body, because every ounce of blood goes through your heart every minute. So already through this experience, you're promoting that healing. And with those increased cells going through your bloodstream, you can experience them taking action now. And in a moment, I'm going to count up to 5. But before I do, I want you to take 3 more deep breaths to anchor this feeling that you already started, because we're going to be going in and out of this space multiple times in this session. And I want you to think of one word that represents how this experience is for you. Everything good about this experience, everything good about the world around you. And in a moment, you're going to take a deep breath in and out. And right at the bottom end of that breath, you're going to gently say that word in your mind. And that's going to anchor this experience and allow you to return to it anytime that you want. So go ahead, take that first deep breath in and out. And right at the very end of that breath, say that word in your mind. As you take that second deep breath in, pulling, drawing all of the resources into this space. As you breathe out, again, right at the end. That's right. As that third and final breath to pull in all of the resources that you've already created and built, as you breathe out and relax into it even more. That's right. Now that breath and that word are going to be the entryways into this space. And when I count up to 5, you're going to be fully alert, refreshed, ready to take on the next part of this lesson, knowing that in a moment, when we return to this space, all it will take is a breath and a word. 1 coming to the surface 3 times more focused, excited for that next piece of information before 5. What do I like now? All right, wiggle, move, get yourself back into this space. Well done. So that's the peripheral nervous system. That's how we can look at activating some of the powerful healing through the mind and the body, all the way to that healing process itself. Next part is the spinal cord, the level of the spinal cord or the spinal phylactic tract. Now, the function of this is that this is an ascending, so it's going up into the brain. It's a pathway that, together with another part called the medial lemniscus, which I just put in just because it makes me sound smart, medial lemniscus, except when I mess up the wording on that. It's one of the most important sensory pathways of the nervous system, and it's responsible for the transmission of pain, temperature, and crude touch. So when you feel a sensation of kind of that glove kind of movements, that deeper feeling, that is sent to an area of your brain called the thalamus. And so the spinal phylactic tract and the spinal cord level, the hypnosis research is that hypnosis can actually decrease or increase the spinal cord nociceptive reflexes. So this is, you go to the doctor and they'll test your elbow, your knee, and look at the reflexes. Well, if you have someone with a very hypersensitive, so it's that central sensitization, very acutely pain, or a very acute level of pain, they're going to have potentially really big reflexes. And if you have someone who's really chilled out and relaxed, those reflexes might change and reduce a little bit. There's still going to be a base level of reflexes that we need to just survive and be. And yet hypnosis can actually alter those reflexes, which is really phenomenal, because that's a very much not even an unconscious control. That is a biomechanical type of a process that hypnosis can affect. So for this, we're going to go into that space now here in a moment. So in a moment, you're going to take one single deep breath in and out, say that word, to go back into that space as I provide you the suggestions that can change your change this part of your brain and body. So you can take that deep breath in. As you breathe out, your eyes close. You say that word gently in your mind. That's right. As you simply go twice as deep as you were before, I want you to imagine that your brain is sending signals to that gate control system to just turn down the pain, turn down the discomfort, turn down the stress, anxiety, whatever it is that you're wanting to change. Just give that suggestion of turning that down now. Think about an experience where in your body you are actually now the most comfortable. Really focus in that area now and filter all of those comfortable sensations right to the level of your spinal cord. Because as that travels through and you bring that intention right through to your spinal cord, you can simply start to feel even more relaxed. That's right. When I count to 5, again, you'll be right back to the here and now, even more alert and ready for that next part. 1 coming to the surface, 3 times, more excited. Before 5. Aye. Just like that, bringing it back into this space. And so that's that direct suggestion right at that level. All right, next is the somatosensory cortex, a place that is involved. And now we're getting to the actual brain level, so now we can actually start to see where in the brain these parts are active. And this is involved with the intensity, the quality of the pain experience. Now, with this, there's 2 pieces of research that are really cool in this space. Well, I don't know how to say the name. Hofbauer, probably close on that one, back in 2001, using PET scans, positive electron tomography. It is a higher, not signal, it's a higher fidelity. It's more accurate than an MRI. It demonstrated both an increased and decreased subjective pain intensity to a consistent pain stimulus using a respective hypnotic suggestion. Basically, what they showed is that this part of the brain, you can make it more active or less, depending on the hypnotic suggestion. Now, this is what, when I initially said about how when we're giving hypnotic suggestions, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously, whether we know we're doing it or not, this is where sometimes when you have someone with a really bad bedside manner, you might actually be cranking up this level of the brain, and that's going to make that pain experience more. So this is the showing both sides. It's the double-edged sword that we can both affect in a positive but also a negative way, this somatosensory cortex. The other interesting part of research is a fairly recent one from Casiglia, and it's about decreasing the subjective pain intensity with hypnosis. And they found that clients reported a complete absence of their subjective pain. So when asked, okay, do you feel pain? They said no. And that actually linked in with this area of the brain being inhibited. So that shows, all right, they had this area of the brain active before, they had pain from 0 to 10 before, hypnotic suggestion and process, this area of the brain then inhibited, turned off, and that client's experience of pain also did. that I love this kind of stuff because it's a direct result of the processes that we're guiding through at that brain-based level. Absolutely love it. All right, into the hypnotic suggestions to affect the somatosensory cortex. Again, get yourself comfortable, take that deep breath in and breath out. Again, third time's a charm, going even deeper, even more relaxed as those eyes just so easily close, going twice as deep, twice as fast as you simply tune into your body. And in this time and space, I just want you to be the hypnotist and just tell your own mind, your own brain that your experience of pain, that stress, anxiety, that thing that you want to change, it's decreasing. Notice that part of your brain, almost like you see it as a functional MRI machine, noticing the little blood flow, noticing the activity, and just turn off the lights of that part of your brain. And as you do, the comfort's growing with each and every breath that you take. And you might notice that there's a certain quality of that experience still left. And just imagine that becoming a little bit more dull, a little bit more vague, a little rounded around the edges. And as you do that, you can simply enjoy how you feel even more. Because when I count to 5, you'll be back to this time and space, just feeling more relaxed. 1, coming to the surface, 3 times more relaxed before 5, double snap into this space, eyes open. Wonder if anyone's eyes opened when I snapped on number 3 there. There's a little bit of a mix up that, hey, that might actually work out quite well. So that's the hypnotic suggestions for the somatosensory cortex. The prefrontal cortex is a really important part of the brain. I just need to notes here. This is the part of the brain that involves our cognitive response, our attention, our focus, our control of our thoughts in the space. In this prefrontal cortex, there's parts of this that are unique to humans. So no other mammals or animals have it. And if you remember that 1-2 pain survival loop that's down on the brainstem and then goes up into this middle part of the brain with your emotional memory system. Well, this prefrontal cortex is part of that third part of our brain. So when this part is active, that means that your 2-3 thriving loop is active. And the research around it, so the Jensen 2011 demonstrated better outcomes than just traditional cognitive behavioral therapy with the use of hypnosis for people, for clients with chronic pain. So this was looking at putting hypnosis against cognitive behavioral therapy, which is quite a well-researched tool that a lot of different psychologists and even physiotherapists, I use it from time to time as well. And it's about challenging some of those unhelpful beliefs. And yeah, we can do that as a hypnotist as well. So when you challenge that cognitive understanding of an experience, then that can actually help you to manage your experience better. So I thought that was really cool. I love research that starts to use hypnosis with some of those well-known, well-used processes or against them, because it quite often makes the tools that we already use more effective. But also when we look at it side by side, quite often it does the same, if not better. So that's a really important area that we're looking at engaging. Hypnosis gets this prefrontal cortex active, but there's a lot of research on meditation that does the same thing with diaphragmatic breathing, with mindfulness. And that's where I don't really care what my clients call the processes, and whatever works for them, that's the language that I use. But it's about the act of being in that space that you've already been a few times tonight. Your prefrontal cortex will be active, and that's going to be helping you to gain a better understanding of your experience. So well done, you. So for the, Yeah, so this one has a couple suggested outcome measures. The here we go, words again, neurophysiology of pain questionnaire. It's the NRPQ. And if you search that one, it's I think about 10 questions, and you do it before and after kind of treatments, and it shows a contextual change of an understanding of what pain is. Might not be a tool that hypnotists you might use, but I think even just having understanding of some of the questions around it might give you a bit of help in that space on things that you can ask your clients as well. And also there's a catastrophization scale. Catastrophization, making the big experience bigger. So that's the client with an injury that you think, oh, that seems like a pretty simple injury, but whoa, this is really happening. I can't do this, and it's like kind of really big experience. Well, that's that catastrophization experience is one that there's a scale to record before and afterwards as well. So into the hypnotic suggestions to affect the prefrontal cortex. So again, get yourself comfortable. Find that spot that's just right for you. Wiggle and move as you take that deep breath in. And out as the eyes close, you go even deeper into that space, using that word that makes it even more powerful the more that you use it. Because as you go into this space where nothing disturbs and nothing bothers you, just notice that the sensations, the emotions that you have, that you can simply accept them calmly, and that they have no implications for the future, that you're simply in this moment right here, right now, and that you can just continue with your life in the best way that you can. That what you do with your life depends on your values, your goals, your dreams, your choices, each moment going forward. And that's the pain, the stress, the anxiety is no cause for undue alarm. It's something that pain can be put in the background, like noisy children being put in the back room with the door closed, or simply acknowledging it and being right there next to it. Because the sensations no longer have an important role in your life, and you can simply just feel free to focus on your fitness, your exercise, your goals, your health, your well-being. And when you're focused on your goals, you won't have enough energy left over to think about the pain and the stress and the anxiety, because the mind is remarkable, particularly when we let go of our thoughts that are getting in the way. And when we acknowledge that negative, unhelpful belief or thought and just allow it to release and return back to the present moment, you can simply choose to be in this moment, and how that can have a profound effect on your ability to manage your experience. In a moment, I'll count to 5, back into the space with a better understanding of how you can make the choices in your life in a more effective way now. 1, coming to the surface, 3 times more knowledgeable before, 5. Wide awake now. Nice. Well done. For any of the Ericksonian hypnotists who are trained in this space, I really like to bring in and weave that language all through these suggestions so that it just keeps coming out in this space. And there, even though I might have things that when you read back in this handout later that you can recognize and see as some of the pattern that I used, it's just a bit of the content that it's then being released in a really organic way, because it's language that I use day in and day out. And the more that you use it, the more that you'll create these language patterns in your brain. So next one, the ACC, or the anterior cingulate cortex. Now, the anterior cingulate cortex is the part of the brain. So it's kind of in this anterior part here, part of that second part of the brain for the emotional understanding of an experience, the suffering components of pain or stress, and that perceived need to address it. So that means this is that bothersome area. How in one moment, you or a client might have a 10 out of 10 pain. When you ask them, what's your pain? What's your stress? They're sitting there and they look at you. That's a 10. Oh, okay. Well, 10 out of 10, I'd be thinking, okay, that's going to the hospital. But that's where those concepts of what a 10 or what a 0, those numbers don't really matter at all. It's what that client is giving you in that moment, where they can calmly say 10, but it's not really a big bothersome. They're not suffering in that moment. So that anterior cingulate cortex of the brain is likely low, versus someone who comes in and says, oh, it's like a 2, but man, it's really stressing me out and it's really big experience. I got this and that. And that's where this anterior cingulate cortex might be really active, because they're in this big experience of suffering in that space. So that's how you can determine how the anterior cingulate cortex is active. There's a great questionnaire called the McGill Pain Questionnaire. And that's one that can help to get at some of the emotional components and the language in this space that helps with that. So with the research, Rainville back, so this is a few decades ago, demonstrated that suggestions to increase or decrease the unpleasantness of pain can change the activation of the anterior cingulate cortex with no effect on the somatosensory cortex. So this is showing, so if we go back this area, now this is the sensory aspect of that, the quality and intensity of the pain. But the anterior cingulate cortex is the emotional experience, the suffering of it. So if we direct a suggestion at this part of the brain, it does not change the somatosensory. So that's a really cool example of how direct our suggestions and processes can be in the brain, that we can actually narrow in and zoom in and say, this is an area of the brain that is very active, and let's look at deactivating, let's look at changing this experience. There's also a meta-analysis of neuroimaging studies by Del Castle back in 2015, confirmed activation in the anterior cingulate cortex during hypnosis modulated experimental pain. So experimental pain means that hot poker or electricity on the skin, and it's the same amount of dose of whatever that heat or electricity is. And then they modulate with different hypnotic suggestions, different parts of the brain and the body. And they found that when they modulated the emotional response, just kind of said, oh yeah, some of the suggestions actually that we'll get in with the hypnotic suggestions here, when you just turn that part of the experience down, it actually drops the level of experimental pain as well. That's pretty cool. All right, so then the hypnotic suggestions for the anterior cingulate cortex. Taking that deep breath in, getting comfortable. As you breathe out, quicker and easier than the time before. And just notice that whatever is left in this space that you want to change, just notice they are just sensations, and that you're okay, you're safe, and the body knows how to heal itself. Like healing is actually our body's resting state. So every time that you enter this space, there's no need to do anything more than that. You can just continue with your life, just relax and know that you're going to feel more and more comfortable, that they're simply sensations. And as you do that, in a moment when I count to 5, you'll be back to this space, just feeling more relaxed and calm. 1, coming to the surface, 3 times more at peace before 5. All right, like now, back into this space. Well done. Now moving on to the insula. So this is going a little bit deeper into the brain. Deeper it is in the brain, that means it's a little bit more structurally important for that 1-2 pain survival loop. And the insula does just that. It is important in evaluating, monitoring, and regulating our overall health. So it is extremely important. And the hypnotic research has shown that hypnotic suggestion can, in a similar way to nociceptive stimulation. So nociceptive is the kind of nerve fiber that if I pinch and there's a nociceptive receptor that goes and says, this is a message going to the brain. Yes, this is pain. So the insula can be activated in a similar way as me doing this. What that means is that, hey, I need to protect my body. My insula is saying, all right, something here needs to be dealt with. And so when you have an experience of pain, quite often the insula is active. But the research shows that you don't have to have an experience of pain in order to turn this part of the brain on. We can use direct hypnotic suggestion in this space to actively get the insula running so that it can promote that overall health and well-being without needing to be in a stress response. So we can activate it from a rest, digest, and heal perspective instead of a fight, flight, or freeze response. So that's a very powerful part of our ability as a hypnotist. There's a few different outcome measures that can look at that overall health and well-being. There's a depression, anxiety, and stress scale, and SF-36. There's anything that's like kind of overall health and well-being is going to be getting into this space. All right. Now to focus in on the insula and that overall health and well-being. Get comfortable, take that deep breath in, and breathe out. And as you might laugh a little bit, those eyes close, and you can just go into that space. And as you notice that you just feel good, that you're whole, you are healed, that you are in the place that you need to be. And as you move into even more of that special space of healing, maybe it's that place in time or that special place where you go where you just feel amazing. Go there now and just feel stronger, healthier, and that your body has everything it needs to just feel comfortable. You can allow any healing that needs to happen, and you are okay because that insula is doing what it needs to in this moment in time. And on the count of 5, we'll be back into the space, just feeling awesome. 1, coming to the surface, 3 times more awesome before 5. Why do it now? Shake it, move it back into the space. Well done. All right. Moving into the thalamus. Now the thalamus, you might remember from the spinal phylactic tract. The thalamus is the relay station between all different parts of the brain. And the research around it showed that so a meta-analysis looking at a lot of different research that the neural matrix can actually decrease this thalamus activity, and that can help to decrease pain. Because if this relay center stops sending messages to the other parts of the brain, well, that's going to then make your body feel better and reduce that potential for pain. And the hypnotic suggestions for this space, pretty much anything that we've already talked about that's going to be inhibiting that 1-2 pain loop. All of the stuff that we've been doing is going to be turning down that relay station in that space. So well done, you're already doing this one. There's also some really cool research on brain connectivity showing that the different parts of your brain can be decreased or increased. Again, this two-edged sword that we need to be careful of the language we use, but that bedside manner is actually one of the most important things that we can have when we're working with a client, because we can go either way with those hypnotic suggestions. There's so Finkelkirtz in 2007, which I just love that name, Finkelkirtz, demonstrated that the suggestions for reduction of pain decrease connectivity between different cortical sites in which separate cognitive modules and subconscious systems may be temporarily incapable of communicating with each other normally. So that's research taught. Things just slow down. It just helps to decrease some of those pathways between all of those centers of the brain. It just starts to slow things down, just starts to break down some of those connections, and that can help you to just simply feel better. I'm going to go back to this one because there is some hypnotic suggestions to help in this space. So get yourself comfortable. Might be sinking real deep into that chair with this next deep breath in and out. The eyes closed, getting so good at going into this space. because as you focus into this space, you are actually training your nervous system so that it's possible to be more aware of the pleasant sensations and feelings in your body. In fact, by this point, it may be hard to notice any other types of feelings. Just notice how the mind focuses more and more on these feelings of calmness, comfort, relaxation. And I wonder if you might be curious about how absorbed you can be in just simply noticing these comfortable sensations, or whatever pleasant nonsense or sensations you might be feeling right now, because you know how this can be just a good feeling to have, and you have the ability to create these comfortable feelings and grow and become even more automatic all the time, to just tune in and be curious in this space. And that you can be so relaxed that you may even start to lose awareness of that affected part of your body, that it can simply float out of this time and space to be able to manage in a way that's appropriate for you, that you can just create some distance that can help to relax even more. And as that change is made, to then integrate it back into your body, feeling even more calm and relaxed than it was before. On the count of 5, you'll be coming back into this space, just feeling more confident in your ability to tune into your body. 1, coming to the surface, 3 times more connected before. 5. Wide awake now. Nice. Well done. And into this space, going into brain activity, looking at alpha, beta, theta, delta. Now, those are the levels from alpha all the way down, the deeper you go. But one of the things is that beta isn't actually a wavelength that we get until 3 or 4 years old. So alpha is the starting, but what we actually want to do is go to alpha as an adult. We are in active right now, beta wavelengths, and it's alpha, which is the transition wavelength to get into theta, which is our hypnotic kind of focused state, and delta is the deepest. That's our deep sleep, that's our Esdale, that kind of a space. But what it showed from the hypnotic research is that there's a decrease in beta activity and increase in the relative alpha activity. So we're getting into that transition into calming the brain, the mind, into that space. And for this, the suggestion is that every breath you take when you go into that space is just going to get you even more relaxed after this session. A little post-hypnotic suggestion to help in this space. Now, so there's a few other things that I have within the handouts that are not brain specific activities in this space. Justine, I had forgotten about the 10 minutes kind of starting after. Should I stop, kind of wrap things up here, or do I go for the extra 10 minutes? What do you,
you do it as long as you want. There's no set time. You can.
Oh, there's no set time. Okay.
No.
Well, I'm gonna do another about 10 minutes though. So that's good. And I'm glad that you said no set time now, because I could have probably been talking about 2 or 3 hours in this space. One thing about this presentation, this is adapted from Damien Taylor and our Hypnotic Pain Principles and Techniques course. And this was a half hour, meant to be just a 20-30 minute presentation that ended up being one of the kind of cornerstones of the weekend. And that's why I wanted to adapt it and bring it into this space. So having that hour gives it a bit more proper time, knowing though that we could actually take an entire weekend and go deep dive into this stuff, which maybe at some point we will. All right, so I'm going to go off screen here for a moment, just have me into this space, because these ones don't have slides. For this next part that'll be in the handout is talking about pain education. Now, there's different ways to talk about this: neuroscience pain education, therapeutic pain education. From a physio perspective, this is stuff that we're trained in school, not much, but even in the East Coast of Canada, one of the things that we learned is from the NOI group, Neuro Orthopedic Institute. They have a great resource called Explain Pain. For any hypnotists that want just a better understanding in a really creative way of what pain is and how it works, I recommend going to NOI and they're an Australian company. They do a ton of really great research. And actually, Lorimer Mosley, David Butler, they're the heads of NOI. And Lorimer Mosley just teamed up with a really prominent hypnosis researcher, I can't remember his name, and came out with a study looking at pain education combined with hypnosis having more improved results than just pain education on its own. And it was a study to look at feasibility of a large scale study, which is really awesome because it means that the physio kind of pain education side is teaming up with the hypnosis to combine and get some really high quality research into this space. So I've gone more into pain education than, or I could go a lot more into this space because this is the bread and butter stuff for me. This is what I got into as a physio before I knew about hypnosis. And then the more that I learned about hypnosis, I realized a lot of the stories, the metaphors, the different things I was using to educate about people's pain and to, when they say my back's out, well, I know it looks right, it's right there, isn't it? And kind of dehypnotizing the language around that space can be very powerful. And when you have tools and resources like Explain Pain or anatomy apps that you can kind of go through and demystify their experience and give them control over that narrative, it can be really powerful. One of the, let's have a look here. Yeah, let's actually take this as another opportunity. I'm going to give you a few of my favorite nuggets of education about pain in that hypnotic space. So you can get yourself comfortable, take a deep breath, breathe out, and just enjoy that space even more. You're going to be having a great sleep tonight, knowing that you've been spending this time on yourself. And as you do, you know that you have a natural pharmacy that you have inside, and that you can unlock that pharmacy right now. You can bring in the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, the endorphins, all at an appropriate rate to just flood your mind and your body so that you can simply feel great. And that this inner pharmacy can just continue to work for you as you go forward and into this night as you have that great sleep. And you can actually notice that control panel of your mind. Find the buttons and dials that are related to the stress or the pain. Just give them a flick down or turn a dial down and just notice in an interesting way what happens. Because then when you find that switch or that dial for that comfort, that relaxation, the excitement in that space, and crank that up, make that your experience. And then take that deep breath. And as you notice that change, as you breathe out, realize that you did that within your own minds and how powerful that can be, that your imagination created the result physically in your body. And that the alarm system of pain or stress, anxiety, just recognize that it is just an alarm system, that it might have been more sensitive over time with the changes that has happened in your life. And yet you can change that sensitivity in another way. You can lower that so that you can just simply have an appropriate alarm system that's going to serve you better. And as you build all of those resources, you'll be able to manage that discomfort and feel more comfort moving forward. And in a moment, when I count to 5 back into this space, just feeling more in control. 1, coming to the surface, 3 times more in control before 5. Wide awake now. Nice. Shimmy, move back into this space. So these stories, these metaphors, anything that you bring into that space, that can be really powerful. Mike Mandel has lots of different stories, and there's the metaphor kind of space that you can get booklets from different people and tell those general or specific metaphors and stories. At the end of the day, the ones that come from yourself, those are the best. So I talk a lot about myself in a humble way as I can, but talking about my experiences managing Mueller-Heostosis in my hands, or hemochromatosis, a condition that caused headaches and fatigue. I use those experiences and how I've overcome it with going and getting my black belt. And those stories are things that can help to connect with people. So tell stories, talk to people, and that can be really powerful. Next section of this is just time-based suggestions on, this is that whether you're someone who talks about regression or future pacing or anything in between, those are just opportunities to change that experience within the moment in time. And whether it's someone who had a very traumatic injury that you want to help to clear up, or just build up the resources to future pace them to get into that space in the months or the years down the line where they can just feel great, using techniques like the rehearsal technique for that. It doesn't matter in where you are in that space, but you can imagine how if there's a big emotional experience around it, whenever they think or talk about that initial trauma or accident, and they feel that big emotional response, well, you can now imagine what parts of the brain are going to be active. That anterior cingulate cortex, that bothersome suffering part, might be active anytime that they replay that initial experience. So if you build their resources so that they can just kind of decrease that ACC and not feel as much suffering in that space, or clear up some negative stuff from the past, that's going to actually be changing that brain activity. And that's how you can create long-lasting change really quickly, or that over time practice of the skill to make it work too. And the second to last of this space, fear of movement. This is particularly a challenging thing for some of the clients that have fibromyalgia and that boom bust mentality, that they'll push too hard and they'll boom and they'll bust and kind of fall back, and they do less and less of that activity. They have more fear of that movement. Catastrophization quite often is in this space too. But there's an outcome measure called the Fear Avoidance Behavior Questionnaire. And that's something that is good to kind of test this specific kind of fear in that space. Now, it is a fear. You're a hypnotist. You've got lots of ways to deal with fears and phobias and stuff like that. Use the same thing. And this is where the hypnotic suggestions for this place, the one that we have here is kind of a future pacing that I can't do as context-free for this, but I have it as an example. Seeing yourself not long from now, lifting your daughter, moving easily and feeling more comfortable. So it's that activity of, oh, I need to lift my daughter because my back is really sore and I can't do that right now. Well, let's get you into that space so you can see that. What do you feel? Where do you feel it? Let's build up those resources and make you feel better in that space. And then enjoying the experience of lifting your daughter. See the smile, feel that love, give her a big hug, and building on those comfort areas. So you're changing from that pain survival loop, that 1-2 pain survival loop, I am fearful of lifting up my daughter, to seeing it in a really safe way and building up and feeling joy and love. You're now getting a 2-3 thriving loop. And that's going to help to decrease that fear. And if they have less fear, then they're going to be able to be more safe going into that physical activity. And then the last one, coming full circle and coming back to neuroplasticity, because that changing that can happen in the brain really quickly. You can also give that suggestion, that's the post-hypnotic suggestion afterwards, to keep that going. And all through this session, I've been dropping in those things about having a better sleep tonight and being able to use that breath in and out and that word more effectively as you keep using it. I've been feeding those post-hypnotic suggestions all the way throughout in order for you to keep that change going. Because when I'm working with a client, I tell them, I want to reach for the top of the mountain. I want complete total healing, top of Mount Everest. And yet, where do we need to get to just to get to Mount Everest Base Camp? We need to get to a certain level of skill and technique, and you need to have an experience just to get to that point in time. So let's get you at least to there, and then you can continue to go all the way to the top of that mountain on your own. And those post-hypnotic suggestions can help them to get into that space. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to have some time for questions here in a moment, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a blurb about what I have coming up next with Damien. So our course, Hypnotic Pain Principles and Techniques, it's on November 19th and 20th in Rotorua at the hospital. We have an agreement with the Lakes DHB to be able to use that space. It's absolutely phenomenal space. Did the last one in March, had a few hypnotists come for that, psychologists, a few physios, doctor, and we're going to be bringing in master students. So some of the students from that first course are going to be coming to assist in this space, but also to provide their experiences on some of them first time using hypnosis and creating results right by the end of the first weekend. I go through, Damien and I go through our favorite techniques for reducing pain, but tell a lot of stories and examples of how they've worked in the past for us. And at the end of the weekend, we have a volunteer session. So we'll be doing it via Zoom. So people bring their laptops, and it's a wicked experience. Last time, the shifts that were made and some of the kind of volunteer clients that came in from a 20-minute session, impromptu with no history, just apply a technique and run with it. It was absolutely amazing, especially for some of these clients or students that weren't even hypnotists before coming in. There's a coupon code HNZ NOV 2022. That's $150 off, ends on September 30th. The regular early bird price is $100 off. So the Hypnosis New Zealand community, even though I haven't been as active in this space in the last few months, I'm really grateful of Justine and everyone here, the support I've received over the years. And sometimes just that little question on, hey, anybody worked with functional seizures before? And that was the last time I asked a question in this space. So it's a great course that I'm super pumped to be providing again. And in this space, this is going to be the last one for a while. Justine mentioned that I am going to be a coach for the Heidong Gumdo Team New Zealand. It's World Champs in Korea in July of next year. Super pumped to be a part of it. I went with 3 of my students for the Team New Zealand in 2019 to South Korea. And it was an amazing experience. And I'm so pumped to do it again. But that means that after this course, my work kind of stuff is going to take a little side, and I'm going to be focusing on my training and fundraising and stuff like that. So my business is still going to be there, but I'm not going to be putting on another Hypnophysios course until likely 2024, like another year and a bit. So if there's any desire that you want to be in this space, there's also a 3-month kind of payment plan that you can use as well. I'd love to see any of you here. You can feel free to reach out to me via the email that I put on, or Messenger, or just kind of reach out in that space. But yeah, stoked about the opportunity to potentially teach some of you in this space. But that's my little pitch. I want to put that off to the side unless anybody has questions about it. I am here now for some questions of your own in this space, anything, everything. And I think from memory, Justine, you've been keeping track of some of the questions, and I'll go from there. Or I can look at the chat box, actually.
Daniel, do you want the questions recorded, or do you want me to stop recording now?
No, it's good to have the questions recorded because it usually gets a bit more discussion in this space.
Also, questions.
I've got something. Can I go?
Yeah,
Jerry,
Daniel, that was absolutely amazing. I've got lots of interest in pain. I'd love to be able to get to do your training too, but I just wondered, before I ask my question, I've got a bit of a sore throat, but if people would be happy enough to show some appreciation for all the work Justine does for us, particularly on her birthday, and sing happy birthday. Would that be cool? I don't mind bleeding, but I probably won't finish singing. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to Justine. Happy birthday to you. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
I love that.
thank you very much. That was the most interesting happy birthday I've ever heard. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you. Daniel, my question sort of relates to Julie Lambert's question as well. So I'm thinking I had a hip replacement, and the recovery's been pretty, I had a fall after, but yet the recovery's been pretty up and down. And at what point do you release the journey towards keep on, testing, having more tests, going back to the surgeon, GP, and just sink yourself and immerse yourself in trying to get the brain to heal the pain condition? It's obviously a question for me, but also for clients I will see too. At what point do you encourage people, look, let's take this route rather than, the physical route?
That's a great question. And this is one that I can bring a little bit more from a personal perspective as well. I mentioned a few conditions I have. Miller-Hiostosis is a rare bone condition in my hands that caused the bone to continue to develop in regular ways, and it impacted on my nerves. So I had severe carpal tunnel impingement by my 20s, lots of pain, aches, and dysfunction in this hand, as well as the hemochromatosis. And so it took me 15 years before I got a diagnosis of my hand, 7 years for hemochromatosis, which is elevated blood levels, which was causing me worsening headaches and fatigue. So I've been in the side of, for years, almost decades in that space of looking for a diagnosis, looking for a source, a physiological reason. And I'm grateful that I found two different conditions, one rare, one common, that were affecting me. And through that time, though, I had to focus my time and energy in different ways. Because when you focus on a diagnosis, a source, that's energy. When you focus on learning new skills and bringing in new resources, that takes energy. And then when you simply use the things that you know are going to be helpful in healing in that space, that also takes energy. And I've had times where I've had to just kind of make a decision that, all right, I'm not going to pursue a diagnosis at this point in time, because I believe right now the best use of my time and energy is just to use the skills I have in the most simple way, repeat it often, and go into that space. So when I have this conversation with my clients, or even for yourself, tune in to your body and just notice, okay, what's the first thing that comes to mind with what you need to, whether it's pursuing that diagnosis, that source, focusing in and your the skills and learning new stuff, like coming and watching presentations like this, or hey, let's just double down on the skills I have to be in this space and do what I can. And there's no reason why you can't have a bit of crossover in this space, but sometimes when you make that decision and just let your unconscious mind kind of that first gut instinct on what comes in, those blink. Malcolm Gladwell has a book called Blink, that for big decisions, it's that gut instinct, and that's the unconscious mind. He's talking about unconscious mind hypnosis without talking about hypnosis. But that's how I navigate that space. About, again, I use my own personal story, but even for yourself, you might just from that conversation have a bit more of an idea of, hey, where do I want to focus my time on right now?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Oh, and also so the early bird finishes 30th of September, but when is the course?
The course is November 19th and 20th.
Thank you.
Apologizing, I'm looking at my phone. My wife's just texted me with the twins taken care of. I just need to have a look at this. Yeah, okay. So safe on that spot.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, hi Daniel. I just put Julie here. I just put a couple of things on the chat box.
Yep.
I don't know if you can see that.
So for those with depression, anxiety, and stress, don't you find the source first? And isn't certain pain from an accident, for example, for certain people end up being a great pause moment? Maybe they need to reevaluate their life. So pain has a deeper meaning rather than trying to eliminate it quickly or quickly eliminate it. Completely agree with that. This is where the chicken or the egg type of a thing, that's for people who come to me and I've had one session those miraculous types of massive changes using hypnosis. Those are amazing experiences, but those are people that are right at threshold. It's kind of a little bit different to think about it, and I don't want to relate it too much to the idea of like smoking cessation, that you can't, the person can't stop smoking until they're at threshold. Something has to change. It has to be me, and it has to be now. And when that happens, sometimes one session, boom, big change can happen. With hypnosis, if all of the other stuff is kind of somewhere in the works and happening, you can sometimes make those really big changes. And the deeper meanings, all of that stuff kind of happens in that experience. And yet quite often, more so than not, what I'm working with is developing ways that people can manage their day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience, the self-hypnosis and stuff like that, and doing little bits of clearing and building up along the way, so that over the course of a few sessions, or for some of my longer term clients, a few months plus, it's the looking, yes, we can look at a source and find from an emotional perspective, this is likely a component, but for some others, there's just a lot of physiological central sensitization. There's just a heightened response and sensitivity in the brain and the body, and that doesn't necessarily change like that. It needs to be progressively changed over time, and your brain can do a really good job at inhibiting some of those signals, but there's still a lot of physiological stuff that's happening in that space as well. So I think you make a great point on that idea of like finding the source. Yeah, sometimes if there is that one source and that one thing, I love it when it's that simple, but quite often pain is a bit more complex in that space. So hopefully that gives you my perspective on that. Is there anything else in that space that you kind of want to tease out?
Well, no, I work a lot around medical cases and also with doctors and surgeons and all sorts of people. I just have a different approach. So, for example, if someone comes in with kidney stones, and I just go straight into the body's control room and speak directly to the kidneys. And then I can use a thing where I can turn down the pain or ask them to turn the dial for the pain down. But I need to find out if it's an old belief, for example. So if they're coming in and they say, my family has a history of kidney stones, then I know that that may well be an old belief. So, for example, I spoke to someone the other day who could hardly stand up with kidney stone pain and told me she had 4 kidney stones, and well, not the other day, 2 years ago. And I said, well, doesn't mean that you have to get kidney stones just because you've got a family history of kidney stones. So she finished the session, and she was actually coming for weight loss. People don't think of me to come for medical cases, but she's had no kidney stone pain after that day. But it can be anything from top to toe psoriasis to hot sweats someone's had for 20 years to, I don't know, like psoriasis, all sorts of weird and wonderful, not had periods for 2 years, or, all sorts of things. So, but I just speak directly to the body. I kind of think of the body more as its own kingdom. So I don't go through the mind. I know you do, but I just go direct to the part.
Well, and I think you're tapping into some of the stuff like from that brain-based perspective, and that talking directly to that part of the body. Quite a lot of the suggestions that I was even providing today was looking at directly accessing this part of the brain, the body. And so when you're talking directly to the kidney and having at least a basic understanding of the functions of the kidney, so you can give the language to support the appropriate healing in that space, sometimes that can be a really powerful component to help to promote that healing. And the part that you're involving in that space is the pain education, the stuff that I was talking about, explain pain, demystifying that process and allowing that person to not be their family history of the condition, that they can be unique in that space. And educating is a massive tool that not just physios use, hypnotists like yourself use it all the time. So yeah, that's brilliant in that space too. Thanks for that. Any other questions?
I think I'd just add just a little bit around anxiety, that, you know, things like by giving hypnotic suggestions of safe places and things like that with people can be, you have to be really careful with that, because it can mean if that safe place is their bedroom, then it can mean that that person doesn't leave their bedroom, so they take it literally. So there's sort of, I'm really cautious about giving too many things like that. There's just it's just the way I kind of think. I sort of think from a mind, body, and spirit perspective, that somehow, sometimes something's happened, which is their wake up moment. So I sort of say, well, the kidneys know how to be kidneys, and the stomach knows how to be a stomach, and the heart knows how to be a heart. I don't need to tell them how to do those jobs, but something's happened to cause an interference. And if the mind is, if the person's stressed and anxious, their weak area, it's going to come out in somewhere, whether it's thyroid or kidneys or gallbladder or whatever. And so when you go back in time and you can deal with the issue that's creating that weak area, for example, there's research on fibromyalgia, for example, and autoimmune things, and as repressed anger. So going back in time and dealing with the repressed anger of something that's happened, actually things shift. Lupus, fibromyalgia, it's really quite miraculous. So there's all these sort of interesting things with how emotions are attached to physical components that for me, I find absolutely amazing.
Yeah, even the International Association of the Study of Pain describes pain as an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. You can't have one more than the other. And if there's a big trauma and a big emotional experience, and clearing that can sometimes be the most significant thing that you can do. And yet sometimes working directly with the sensory aspect, and maybe the emotional component isn't as present, but still important in that space. You can't separate the two. You gotta go from both sides on that. Thanks for that, Julie. Any other questions from anyone?
I'm just trying to work out with it, is that if you, so I've got a lady with like severe restless leg syndrome, and I think because I'm a nutritionist and a hypnotherapist, but yeah, like it's a B1 deficiency and all that sort of stuff. But also I kind of I just was wondering, like, the safety aspect of sort of detaching that pain, how to put it into suggestion so their safety mechanism is still there.
Yep.
If it is required, if you see what I mean, of detaching that sensory pain.
So
yeah, just trying to get my head around it.
yeah. So the sensory aspect, so you're talking about it from like a safety consideration perspectives, that we don't want to eliminate the sensation. Yeah, that was
because my body's talking
number...
to her, like her body's talking to her, saying, look, I'm in pain, there's something wrong. But if I was to go in there and like shut that off, then I wouldn't know if the pain is escalating into an unsafe zone.
Yeah,
you know,
so that was my first question that I had bringing into the study of hypnosis before I committed to learning it as a physiotherapist. What, like, these people like Freddie Jacqueline, who are, when I was learning, I was like, from my perspective, it was, they're claiming that they are helping these people with experiences of pain from years or even decades within a session, and one moment, boom, and this pain is gone. The first thing I thought of, cancer, hey, like we as physios were trained in the red flags and to know, okay, this is an unusual pain experience, and classification and looking at things from making sure, is this something that needs further looking at? And if I help someone inhibit a pain response that is actually coming from a cancerous part of their brain or their body, then that's going to be bad. And the way that I address that, and I have more confidence in myself, one is that if the brain is giving a message for a certain reason and you attempt to turn it off, it's just going to keep coming back. It's the same as a physio. And if I'm working with someone with low back pain and I'm doing manual therapy and massage and kinesiotape and ultrasound and exercises, and I'm using all of my techniques and strategies, and the back pain is actually getting worsening, and they're also getting bowel and bladder problems as well with it, that means that the brain is saying, hey, no, this needs to be looked at more so. And as a physio, I have then referred back to a doctor once in my career so far with back pain that ended up being tumors in the spinal cord, because he had a history of cancer. So after only 1 or 2 sessions that I was not getting any change because of my manual therapy techniques, this is pre-hypnosis, then I referred back to the doctor to get a full workup and testing in that space. So I don't, if the body is giving a message, I'm wanting to look at the differential diagnosis of what it could or couldn't be, and have those red flags and the yellow flags in mind so that I can refer back to the doctor if I think they need to. But if they're relatively safe, they've had imaging and all of the things, and they're just, I need to heal, I need to change, then I can be much more confident in my approach that to reduce the pain in that space.
Oh yeah, cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Daniel, so much for today and all the information. And I love watching anything about the brain and the parts of the brain. It's one of my things I find very exciting. Cool. So thank you for today. And whoever does go to the training, I'm in Rotorua. So if you guys want to do dinner that night, if I'm not there anyway, yeah, we can catch up and do a HNZ thing.
That'd be cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really good. Really super interesting.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Well, thank you so much and have a good night, everybody.
Cool. Thank you so much. That was
Thank you,
awesome.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll see you later.
Take care.
See ya. Oh, stop.